Hillary Clinton makes history. The former First Lady, U.S. Senator, and Secretary of State becomes the first female presidential candidate of a major party. The DNC convention started this week with protests and division. How will Democrats convince Bernie Sanders supporters to vote for Clinton in November? Will Tim Kaine's pro-abortion voting record hurt the Democratic ticket? We'll talk to a leading former presidential Catholic candidate about the issue of life. And pro-lifers are calling the DNC platform the most extreme ever when it comes to abortion. We'll tell you how it's taken a hard left. Those stories and more on this special edition from the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia.
And so, my friends, it is with humility, determination, and boundless confidence in America's promise that I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for EWTN's Convention Special. I'm Lauren Ashburn. After a rocky start, the Democrats finally joined hands this week and chose Hillary Clinton as their nominee. But Bernie Sanders supporters did not go down without a fight. President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama stunned the convention with emotional speeches, as did former President Bill Clinton, who painted the personal side of his wife. But will all of this be enough to help Hillary Clinton defeat Donald Trump in November? Joining me right now, Tim Carney from the Washington Examiner and Melinda Hennenberger, editor-in-chief of Roll Call. The question is unity. Did both parties do it enough to move forward?
You know, I don't think either convention, I'm going to go way out on a limb here and say that neither was a perfectly unified show, far from it. I have never seen, as I think I said before on here, a nominee booed at her own convention before, and I've also never seen a speech like Ted Cruz's at a nominating convention. So I would say that both parties still have a lot of work to do on unifying.
Tim, what does Hillary Clinton have to do between now and November to win?
Well, she's got to basically keep Donald Trump down around 40%. That Donald Trump sometimes climbs up to about 45%. He's got a ceiling there. I think she has a ceiling too. So she's going to have to be an attack dog, but also not just seem too negative. I think it's really easy. He can be as negative as he wants. He doesn't have to show a positive side. But because she's supposed to be the stateswoman, she has to thread the needle of being an attack dog who also is upbeat.
What were the hits and misses? Let's start with you, Melinda. What do you think was a real hit for the Republicans?
I think the clearest hit for the Republicans was Ivanka Trump, who did a really fabulous job humanizing her dad, softening him a little bit, showing his personal side. As far as the hits here, I thought a couple of the less noticed ones were the speech of the woman who was a war widow whose husband was killed in Iraq and said she was billed to $35,000 from the life insurance by Trump University. I think that's a powerful tool to use against Trump in the fall.
And you, what are your thoughts?
I thought that Michelle Obama was really one of the most touching speeches. It got people saying that she should run for office. I think some people might be done with the whole legacy family thing.
And I think Michelle Obama would say, no way.
But yes, but it was really an exceptional speech. On the Republican side, Chris Christie was the one who got the crowd fired up the most. On the downside, I think Cory Booker was going to be the most disappointing because he really has ambitions. He wants to run for president. He wants to be governor. And today he didn't do this week he didn't do what Barack Obama did in 2004. So I think looking forward, I think Booker has to do something else to climb the ladder.
Right. So in the coming weeks, in the coming months, we have, some 100 days until everybody goes in and makes their decision. Do you think that we are going to see this campaign go as negative as we have ever seen before, Melinda?
Yes, I think we're going to continue to hear about Trump University. I think we're going to continue to hear about Trump making fun of a disabled reporter for the New York Times, and we're going to be shown that clip over and over. We're going to be shown the things he said about women, pigs, dogs, etc. over and over. And on the other side, we're going to hear about the Clinton scandals until we have them all memorized to perfection.
Right, I showed a Clinton bag that they had written on it, Clinton baggage, and I think that that's a great point. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the attempt to brush aside her email problems is silly, and the Democrats are going to actually have to address it because people are saying, what is she hiding? And until she addresses it, nobody wants to appoint a commander-in-chief who they think is sort of shady. And then on the other hand, I mean, Donald Trump's negatives, his unfitness for job, that's a great attack line. I think you'll see these guys, nobody polling even near 50%, at least for the next couple months.
I want to thank both of you for joining us for both conventions. Your wisdom, your insight has been just great. Thank you so much to Melinda Hedenberger from Roll Call and Jim Carney from the Washington Examiner.
Thank you
so much.
Hillary Clinton's support for abortion on demand goes back decades. Her VP pick, Tim Kaine, says he personally opposes abortion, but his pro-abortion voting record doesn't make sense to many Catholics, including theologians who call it duplicitous. Also, former presidential candidate and Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, also Catholic, called him out this week.
It's like saying, well, I'm personally against murder, but it's okay for you to murder somebody. And don't try to hide behind this sophistry of, oh, well, personally I wouldn't do it. Well, you know, Pontius Pilate washed his hands too. And that's what we're seeing from Tim Kaine.
The DNC platform contains new language on abortion and vows. Quote, to continue to stand up to Republican efforts to defund Planned Parenthood health centers, which provide critical health services to millions of people. And it now seeks to undo a key pro-life amendment that has been in place for more than 3 decades. Earlier this week, I sat down with EWTN senior contributor Dr. Matthew Bunson to examine the issue. But first up, Jason Calvi takes a look at the platform.
The 2016 Democratic platform supports the continued funding of Planned Parenthood. It also seeks to overturn most protections for the unborn, including by repealing the Hyde Amendment. That part of U.S. law bans taxpayer funding of abortion and was first passed in 1976. Republicans say that's extreme.
For years, we've had an agreement, both Republicans and Democrats, that we wouldn't be using taxpayer money to fund abortions. Even fairly liberal Democrats understood that that wasn't a good idea. Now Democrats are talking about rolling that back and allowing taxpayer dollars to be used to pay for abortion.
It's the latest move from a party that defends abortion as a woman's right. But some pro-life Democrats are trying to make their voices heard.
When they don't listen to people like us, we become a minority party. You know, if you look at the House of Representatives, we have 188 members. That's the smallest that we've been since decades. And so the only way to have a majority is to be the big tent and have pro-life Democrats in the party.
Democrats for Life paid for this billboard. It cites a CNN poll which says 1/3 of Democrats self-identify as pro-life. The group is challenging their party to change course or lose. They say since 2008, Democrats have lost 69 House seats, 13 Senate seats, 11 governorships, and 30 state chambers.
I think there's a lot of soul searching right now and saying, okay, look at these numbers across the country. How do we rebuild?
Here at the DNC, Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.
Jason, thank you very much. Joining us now to explore the abortion platform in depth is Dr. Matthew Bunson, a theologian, historian, and EWTN contributor. Welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you.
The platform, it also calls for federal taxpayer funding of abortion on demand, and it is in very stark contrast to the conservative platform we saw, which banned late-term dismemberment abortions from a historical perspective. Walk us through why this is such a radical change and a radical difference from the other party.
Yeah, well, Bill Clinton's one of the speakers. The last time he ran for president, his platform in 1996 had one reference to abortion. The 2016 platform for the Democrats has 19 references to abortion. That itself gives us an idea of the seriousness of this issue for them. The other aspect, too, is that in that 96 platform, there was specific reference to conscience. You will not find that word in the Democratic platform in 2016.
Because abortion plays such a prominent part in the platform, what does that say about the Democrats' priorities both here and abroad?
Yeah, well, here and abroad, they're trying to get rid of, they propose in this platform to get rid of both the Helms Amendment, which bans taxpayer funds for abortions overseas, and the Hyde Amendment, which bans taxpayer funds in the U.S. What it's telling us is that they want abortion to be one of the key priorities for their foreign policy. This is what Pope Francis refers to when he uses the term ideological colonialism.
Ideological colonialism. We're going to have to leave it there. Dr. Matthew Bunson, EWTN senior contributor, thank you so much for joining us.
Always good to be with you.
Elaine Kmark is a member of the Democratic National Committee, a superdelegate, and author of Primary Politics, Everything You Need to Know About How America Nominates Its Presidential Candidates. Democrats can't deny that there's a division in the party. I asked her how they are going to heal the rift.
Let me say two things about that. One is that, as we're seeing in the polls outside of the hall, 90% of Bernie Sanders voters are planning to vote for Hillary Clinton. So I think it's a little bit different. I think you have the real true believers inside here in the hall. And secondly, I think that as the case gets made against Donald Trump, a lot of people are going to say, yes, Hillary is by far and away the safer choice.
What does the party need to do to unify?
The party needs to show these Sanders delegates that in the platform, Hillary Clinton is not very far away from Bernie Sanders. And she has the added advantage of all this experience. So she might be able to actually make some of their goals happen in a way that even Sanders himself could not.
What is the DNC's game plan for the general election? Is it attack, attack, attack Trump?
I think it's going to be twofold. It's easy to attack Trump. And in fact, Trump keeps stepping in it and saying ridiculous things. So I think that's kind of easy. You almost don't have to attack him. You can just let him go. I think
some would disagree with you that he is actually being effective by using sarcasm, but okay.
Yeah, that's right. But on the Hillary side, I think the game plan is going to be to emphasize that she is steady and progressive, and that for people who don't think she's progressive enough, they ought to understand that she actually is a progressive who can make something happen, that her experience is an asset for their program.
All right, Elaine Kmark, superdelegate here at the Democratic National Convention. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Coming up, Democrats are calling for major immigration reform. We'll talk to a congressman from Texas whose district is near the border. And will Sanders supporters stick with the DNC ticket or switch their vote to Donald Trump? The RNC's chief strategist offers his prediction. Welcome back to EWTN's Convention Special. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The issue of immigration took center stage this week as the convention featured undocumented immigrants as well as famous Hollywood actress Eva Longoria. The DNC platform calls for immigration reform, saying we need to urgently fix our broken immigration system, which tears families apart and keeps workers in the shadows, and create a path to citizenship for law-abiding families who are here. The plan also calls for repealing the 3-year, 10-year, and permanent bars. But not all Democrats agree with that proposal. Earlier this week, I interviewed Representative Henry Cuellar from Texas, whose district borders Mexico. I asked him to explain the impact of the bars.
Well, looking at the platform, it's a very progressive platform on immigration. That particular section says that if you have some sort of violation, and a permanent violation could be a serious drug situation or a smuggling situation, they're saying that they want to eliminate all that and anybody can come in, and with all due respect, I disagree with that. I think we need to have some bars. Maybe we need to review them. But to eliminate, especially the permanent bars, I think that would just mean an open border.
Tell me what you think needs to be done and what you have been doing in your district.
Well, certainly I support immigration, full immigration reform. One of the things I've been working on in appropriations is last year we were able to get 55 new immigration judges because there's such a backlog. Right now there's over 500,000 cases backlog. That means 2019, maybe even further, people that are not going to get their day in court. This year we added money. I added money for another 25 new judges. So we're adding judges so people can have their day in court.
And is that more important than border security? And also, as a Catholic, how do you balance border security with welcoming our neighbor?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if we have full comprehensive immigration reform, you can have three things. One, smart border security, sensible border security, no wall, but having the right balance of people and personnel and technology on the border. And I live in the border. Number two, you got to have a guest worker plan that works. And number three, what do we do about the 11, 12 million undocumented persons? And whether we do a pathway or legalize those people, that's what we need to do. And that's how you can find a balance as a Catholic, where you can have border security, but at the same time, treat people with respect and dignity.
This was a dramatic week for the Democrats, with the abrupt resignation of DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the pro-Sanders supporters trying desperately to hang on to their candidate. I spoke with Sean Spicer, the Republican National Committee's chief strategist and director of communications, and asked him what he thought of the Democrats' gathering.
As a Republican strategist, I'm very happy with what they did here in Philadelphia. I think in a lot of ways, we had our own little struggles in Cleveland, but after you see what happened here, I'm very happy. I think both logistically and message-wise, it was utter chaos. I mean, you had in the hall and outside in the streets utter divisions in the Democratic Party. Here in the hall, you saw walkouts of delegates. You saw speakers repeatedly getting booed. And then in the streets, you just saw massive protest. So knowing how bad it can get, I actually am really proud of the job that the team did in Cleveland.
Pleased it wasn't you from the opposing
we had,
team.
As a side note, there were more arrests the Sunday night of this event than there were the entire week of Cleveland. For all the hype,
saying Cleveland you're going to bring your gas masks,
right.
It's going to be terrible. Let's talk about how to go forward with independents.
Right.
There's a poll that Gallup did that said that independents favor Hillary Clinton 48 to 44%. They're more likely to favor it. So how does the Republican Party woo those independents going forward?
Right, it's a good question, because I think there's three groups of voters of that segment, right? There's ones that are going to vote for Hillary Clinton.
No matter what.
They haven't made that decision yet, but you can tell by the modeling. They're going to go. There are ones that probably will stay home, won't vote for either candidate at the end of the day. And then there's ones that you can win over. And I think we've got to focus on those latter two segments, the ones that we can win over and the ones that we don't think will turn out, and if there's a way to do it. Part of that's through voter modeling. We sit down and look at the voter score of every voter and find out what those issues are. Is it a faith issue? Is it an economic issue that gets them out, and who that influencer is that gets them to vote?
Where do you think the Bernie Sanders supporters are going to go? Will they come to you?
Just like I said, I think there's three groups of those.
Yeah.
There's ones that are going to ultimately go with Hillary because they realize what's at stake for the Democratic Party and the left. There's ones that are going to say, I'm just going to sit home, I'm never voting for either. And then there's, I think, probably 10 to 15% of them that are winnable by Trump because they're so upset with what's going on in the government. And Hillary Clinton's got such a trust problem with the voters that I think that there's a real shot at getting them.
And what about pro-life Democrats? There has been very little talk here.
There has. I was on my way here today for this interview. There's a billboard right near our Rapid Response Center that says 1 out of 3 Democrats are pro-life. Don't silence us. And I think that's what you saw here all week. Every one of those pro-life Democrats was silenced. They weren't allowed to speak. Not much has changed since Bob Casey was denied the ability to speak from the Democratic floor, a decade ago.
Last question. Michelle Obama spoke on Monday. You say that the First Lady is off limits for criticism. Does that apply to first men?
Well, he's not the first man.
Yet.
He won't be. No, he will never be. That's what we're trying to avoid.
Right.
But again, I think the First Lady and the President's children are always off limits. We should win a battle of ideas. Pro-life conservatives, fiscal ideas should trump the day every time. We shouldn't have to resort to name-calling, especially when the First Lady or the kids.
Excellent. Sean Spicer, Communications Director, Chief Strategist at the RNC. Thank you for joining us. Up next, what role did faith play in the DNC convention? And a young boy's moving performance of the Star-Spangled Banner and his connection to Pope Francis. Welcome back to EWTN's Convention Special. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The brutal murder of a French priest celebrating Mass this week is a stark reminder of the threat of terrorism and the importance of religious freedom. Faith was a common topic at last week's GOP convention, but that hasn't been a focus in Philadelphia. Earlier this week, Mercedes and Matt Schlapp gave me their take on the DNC convention from a Catholic perspective.
From a Catholic perspective, I have to say it's kind of sad 4 years ago that when they literally on national television removed any mention of God from the platform. And I think about my mom. She was a Catholic Democrat growing up in New York. And the party is in a much different place on these cultural issues than it was then.
Mercedes, anything strike you?
Well, I think that there's a sense that there is really no home for Catholics or Christians here in the Democratic National Convention. There was a sign around, a billboard that says, we are the pro-life Catholics, Democrats. We should be part of this big tent. And I don't think that it doesn't seem that there's any room for them here in the DNC.
Especially because I haven't, and I'm wondering if you have, heard a lot of discussion about faith. Have you?
No, I really haven't. I think the Republicans actually tried very hard. They had several pastors speak from the main stage. I don't think Donald Trump seems like any particularly religious person, but there was a real attempt to understand that that's part of the coalition and to genuflect to these voters and to say we need you on the team. Here, it's almost the opposite, where if you hold those traditional cultural issues, that you hear what's happening on the stage, it's hard for people like that, I think, to see if they have a home here.
Right. And religion has been put in the back seat. So they're talking about, obviously, the LGBT rights. They talk about just love in general as a policy here in the DNC. But where is the love for the Catholics and the Christians and for those religiously persecuted? We saw that there was no mention of ISIS or terrorism last night. And then what do we see today in France?
A priest who is killed
attacked by ISIS.
Look, this is a wake-up call. This is the future. If you are going to stand up for your faith overseas, and I fear even here that there's going to be more and more persecution, it's really a wake-up call, I hope, to both parties. This is something I hope that as Americans we can stand up together, Republican, Democrat, Independent, and say, you know what, in America you can practice your faith.
This week's Democratic convention kicked off with a face and voice that may be familiar to our EWTN viewers. The same teenager who performed for Pope Francis during his 2015 Philadelphia visit moved the entire convention crowd with his rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. I asked him if he was nervous when he sang.
I don't think I was nervous. I think I was more excited, but I think I was a little more nervous than when I sang for the Pope because I had more lead time than now. Yes.
Right. Other than the 5 minutes
yes.
that you had to prepare for the Pope. Tell us that story. It's a great story.
So there was a set change between Aretha Franklin and the Fray, and they didn't want the Pope just sitting there looking at people moving stuff, so they said, we need somebody to go out there. So they went to my choir director and asked if he could bring the choir out, and he said, I can't get them together in 60 seconds. And he said, Bobby Hill can do something, and they were like, who's Bobby Hill? I don't want to put this kid out on stage with a mic.
I'm scared.
But then they were desperate at the end, so they put me on stage with a mic, and
was it amazing? That must have been unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. It was
Best
amazing.
moment of your life?
Yes.
Yes, by far. You got to give him a gift.
Yes. Our choir went on a tour to Antarctica, and we brought back a rock. So I gave him a rock from Antarctica, and all the continents were represented except for Antarctica, so I gave him the rock. And he gave me a rosary.
Thank you, Bobby. We wish him great success in his career. For the EWTN Politics team, thank you for joining us for this special edition. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @EWTN and @LaurenAshburn. Before we go, we'd like to share Bobby Hill's beautiful voice and some stunning images of the historic city of Philadelphia. Good night, and God bless.
O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled